Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage the director of the Florida Project, Sean Baker. Congratulations. It really is kind of amazing how you balance the joy of childhood, that universal aspect of what it's like to be a child, and I love that, not only with children but with adults, like something like The Bicycle Thief, where, despite what the character is, everybody can relate to it, and certainly even more so with kids, but also the other side of being a child and being on the fringes of society, in a sense.
Well, yeah, DeSico was a major influence in my entire career, so it's nice.
We didn't talk about that, though.
No, but back to the Little Rascals, I guess. The Little Rascals basically did this 70, 80 years ago, if you think about it. These were comic shorts of the 20s and 30s set against the Great Depression. Most of the characters in our gang were living in poverty, but it wasn't the focus. The focus was what made kids kids, and what the universality of childhood. And we thought that was the way to go with this film. We felt that we want people, audiences, and hopefully this worked for you guys, but to feel as if you were one of Mooney's gang of friends, one of the gang, spending the summer with Mooney, laughing at their mischievous antics. And we did this intentionally with the hope that once we get to the inevitable, drama, that it would mean more, and because you were one of them, and you would leave the theater thinking about the real Moonies out there, and the real little Janceys and Scooties, and perhaps looking into your own community to see if this is actually happening in your own community, because the issue of the problem that we have with the hidden homeless is a national issue. It's not just Kissimmee and Orlando. In California, we have a problem in the OC, in San Bernardino, and I'm sure somewhere up here in the north.
Absolutely.
So this is something that we're telling people, that it might be right under your nose in your own community.
Yeah, and there's a quote that I found, not doing any research for the Florida Project, but actually when Sean Penn was here the other day, that's something that he referred to. I'm not quite sure if it was Doctorow or Faulkner who said this or something similar, but it actually, I never said it during his tribute, but I think it really applied to what you're doing. And the quote is, "The artist's responsibility is to know the time within which he lives." And I see this not only in the Florida Project, but with Tangerine and your other films as well. And it's not only a gift to us, but it's such a integral part of art, and one that apparently has been discussed, long before I was doing this. Does that resonate with you?
Yes, it does. Well, at least those are the films that I'm drawn to. I mean, of course I love period pieces, and I love directors who are able to really achieve those epic, looks at our past or our future. I love fantasy, sci-fi, but I think I'm most drawn to contemporary films that are about our time, the contemporary. And because I think it makes us confront it. It confronts our times. We have to, there are certain issues that I believe that should have a light shined upon them, and cinema can help that, and we can, deal with it in the time that we're in. That's part of the magic of this medium. So, I do agree with that. I do.
Well, as I said at the top of the show, it's like this is the definition of empathy, this film, and I see that, when you're dealing with subject matter that is marginalized, and, thank you for that. That's really
I mean, that's very nice. Thank you. But I look at directors such as Ken Loach is a major inspiration for me, because if you think about Ken Loach's career for the last 50 years, he's had a singular vision, and he's been confronting British politics and very important, timely issues in a way that I think is just, in a way, activism to a certain degree. And I really admire the man for that continued mission. And as I've moved along in my career, I've been drawn to tell those stories. Yeah.
and I love
just love throwing a shout out to Ken Loach. Sorry about that.
Yeah, yay for Ken Loach. But the juxtaposition between Disneyland and the gaudiness and the aging of the motels and everything is just, was that something that you were, did the story come first and then the location of Orlando and then Disneyland
No, it was this problem that this area had. Yeah. Chris Bergosh, my co-screenwriter, his mother had moved to the Kissimmee, Orlando area, and he was visiting his mother often. He's also a Disney historian. He knows everything Disney. So he just started sending me these articles about this problem that was happening along Route 192, in which all of these businesses were affected by the recession of '08, and a lot of these motels that were once tourist motels and basically booking tourists every night had turned into essentially welfare motels. And there were news articles written, I think, focused on this specifically for the same reason we did, for this very sad juxtaposition. Kids growing up in the motels right outside of what we consider the happiest place on earth for children. So, and it wasn't it could be some people's, I don't want people to think it was a sort of a cynical irony that we wanted to. It was more about saying, if it could happen here, it can happen anywhere. And so we went into it thinking at first this was going to be we always knew it was going to be a mother-daughter relationship, using some of the tropes of the Disney films in which there's a damaged mother or a mother out of the picture, and a single parent. And that was all we had at first. And I hadn't been taking my trips there yet to really start our research process, because with every film we try to hear from the community, and we don't really nail down our script until we're actually have done taken a journalistic approach to understanding the community. And so we tried to get financing for this film around 2011, 2012, when I had Starlet out, which was pre-Tangerine. We could simply not find financing because it was a low budget. It couldn't be a micro budget. We had to travel there. We knew we were working with kids, et cetera, et cetera. So we made Tangerine out of sort of desperation, and that opened up the doors for us and found us June Pictures. June Pictures said, we'll now finance whatever you want to do. You get Final Cut. We were like, okay, well, we have the Florida project ready to go. Well, it's not ready to go, but we need to begin our research process. And we got a grant from CineReach, which is a wonderful nonprofit from New York that helps films get off the ground. They just recently actually fully funded Beach Rats. I think it might be, is it playing at this festival or did it play here? I don't know. Eliza Hittman's wonderful indie.
I don't remember.
So, but CineReach gave us enough money where we were able to take trips there. And again, start our interview process. And in those times, we were interviewing residents from these motels, and we found out that we were meeting kids that were Mooney's age that had grown up their entire lives in the budget motels. So we knew this was still timely, it was still important to do. This was 2014. And we just started setting down the road of writing a fiction narrative screenplay based on all the information that we were collecting and the people that we were meeting. We met this one gentleman who probably it was that moment that really we felt like this was the guy who was letting us into the world. He was a motel manager at one of these motels that was directly across the street from the Magic Castle. And he really opened up the world to us because he really wanted to tell the story of what was going on there. He felt it was important. He actually helped Ramin Barani on 99 Homes as well, which is 99 Homes takes place along Route 192 as well. But so anyway, this guy and along with the other motel managers that we met, it was a really, there was something about this gentleman, there was the struggle inside, I could see it. He had a love and a compassion for the residents. He looked out for them, cared for them, but there was also the fact that at any night he might be forced to evict one of them if they didn't come up with the rate for that night. And they would be literally on the street. We saw families walking up Route 192 with their shopping carts with all their belongings, just looking for the next motel that would take them. He might be put in that position, and he probably has many times in the past. So there was that, he kept his distance. And so I saw this reluctant parental figure inside this guy, and also with all the other guys that I met. And that's sort of what inspired very much what inspired the Bobby character.
You can see that in Willem.
Yeah. And Willem met with that guy. He took the time to spend time with him in the week before that he came down before we needed him. He came a week before we actually were rolling cameras on him. So he spent the time to absorb and interview these guys and sort of become Bobby. It was very interesting to watch.
Yeah, and you can see the difficulty of trying to deal with being a manager, a business person, and his empathy for these people. I want to talk a little bit at some point about how you work, because it's so interesting, but I have to ask of course, the success of this film, certainly has a lot to do with these kids. And I heard Brooklyn Prince, you developed her in a lab, and she wasn't really actually a little girl.
Yes.
It was a synthetic girl.
Exactly.
Because she is
yes, we'll be cloning
beyond
her. We'll
normal
be cloning.
as a young actor.
No, Brooklyn Prince is a freaking on a whole other level. This girl is a prodigy. I am so honored to have worked with her. She truly does. She understands the craft of acting. Even now, she's 7 at the age of 6
she's
when
a
we
veteran
shot with
now.
her. Yeah, she had experience prior to this in doing some commercials in the Orlando area and one micro budget, and indie that is. And she just had every quality I was looking for. Because again, I was looking for like the present day Spanky McFarlane. So she came in there with the energy and the wit and the cuteness and the puffy cheeks. And then all of a sudden, as we got closer as we were moving into this, I had a wonderful acting coach by the name of, she's my partner actually, Samantha Kwan, and she worked very closely with these kids and made this summer into a summer camp for them. But the incredible thing about Brooklyn is that we didn't even have to do much to get her to that place at the end of the film. That scene that we shot with her, it was almost like she just knew. She has a method all her own, and she came to the set that day ready to cry because, of course, we scripted for tears, but of course we weren't pressuring her, and I never wanted to actually go to that place of manipulation. If she wanted to do it, she wanted to do it. We didn't want to say, think about a sad time in your life or anything like that. She was very aware of, like, my character is going through this. My Mooney may never see her friend again, may never see her mother again. And she was like, I think I'm ready to do this. And it was an incredible day because it happened about a week and a half into shooting because we had to shoot completely out of order because of budget. And that day, there was like a weight taken off of our shoulders because we knew we had something special there. She was on a whole other level. Yeah. Can I tell you a quick little anecdote?
Absolutely, please.
Okay, so we set up the camera, big 35 millimeter camera, over Jancy's shoulder at Mooney, at Brooklyn, and as we were getting rolling, little Valeria was still in Valeria. She hadn't gotten into character yet, so she was actually having a little bit of small talk with Brooklyn, and she goes, "So are we going to have a sleepover this weekend?" Because they became very good friends. They became best friends actually while we were shooting. And she was having a little bit of small talk, and Brooklyn goes, "Valeria, I'm going to have to focus right now. I'm going to another place, and I'm bringing the tears. So excuse me." We're just like, "What was that? Did that just happen?" But then a minute later, when she actually delivered that, we were Samantha, I believe, was to my left, and I believe Alexis Zabe, my wonderful cinematographer, was to my right, and we were just looking at each other saying, this is unbelievable. We had no idea it was going to go to that level of just bringing the height of just emotion and that wonderful performance. And and I wanted to yell cut because I actually couldn't deal with it anymore. But she said goodbye, and that was the last line we needed for her. I said cut, and it was like a swarm of crew members coming around and hugging her, and she came down, and I didn't need a second take because we got the first take. And so I said, that's it, you don't have to do it. She called her mom. She said, her mom wasn't there on the set that day. Her grandmother was, but she called her mom and said, I think I did well. And I said, you did more than well. And then I said, I got to get a side shot that never even ended up being in the film, like a side angle that you don't really get to see her face because it's too wide. And I said, you've already done it once beautifully. You don't have to do it again. You just fake it. Just fake that you're crying, and it will work. And I yelled action, and she started crying again. She got the tears a second time. So she's just on a whole other level, this girl.
Why don't we open it up for a few questions here from the audience? Do we have mic runners, or we just want to shout it out? Gentleman there.
I can shout out. I really do appreciate Alexis Sanchez cinematography in this film. I think it adds a wonderful layer to your narrative. I'm very intrigued by your locations because visually it's just masterful. And could you speak a little bit to the process of choosing your locations off of that strip there?
Question is, how did you choose your locations?
Yeah. Oh, well, I agree with you. Alexis is amazing, and he was a joy to work with. But regarding the locations, the location scouting was actually part of, in a way, our writing the script. I mean, as we were, Chris Bergash and I, we spent time there, and as we were interviewing people and absorbing the environment, we also were just like, well, this is obviously, we're gonna have to shoot here, we're gonna have to shoot here, we're gonna have to shoot here. There's a slight, we did play with geography just a hair for dramatic purposes. For example, Magic Castle isn't next door to Futureland, but it used to be. There used to be another motel right next to Magic Castle, so we felt it was okay to cheat on geography a hair. But it was like these wonderful small businesses exist up and down Route 192, and they've always been there. They've been there since the 70s. They were targeting the same tourists that were going to the parks, so they ripped off the themes of Disney. They had candy color. They were themed. This all exists. It was almost like production value given to me as a gift. I was like, oh, I'll take it. So yeah, that all exists there. You can actually check out the Magic Castle Inn and Suites on Yelp. Give them a good review.
Okay, other questions? You want to take one on this side?
I was really struck by the closing of this film and Tangerine, and the way both end with this like grace note of friendship between Cindy and Alex, and then here between Chansey and Mooney, and wondering if there's anything that contributed to that or kind of drove that as an ending.
Oh, well, I think that we started after we made this film called, Chris and I have written 3 films together now, Starlet, Tangerine, and this one, and I think that it was during Starlet that we just started saying, we're trying to do something here where we're trying to tell a universal story with universal themes, and that was the first one where we said, this is a film about friendship, and so that anybody, hopefully anywhere in the world, can identify with an adult film performer, played by Dree Hemingway. You never thought you would be able to walk in her shoes or identify with her, but using something that we all are familiar with, friendship, hopefully you were able to connect to those characters. So we were sort of conscious of that moving forward, and having a friendship theme, of course, in Tangerine, and then continuing with this one. It's something that, along with other, I think, some universal themes, in this one, childhood. We've all experienced childhood. We've all, there's infidelity, and in Tangerine, a lot of us have unfortunately dealt with infidelity in our life. There are universal themes that we're trying to cover, so that that audiences can connect with these characters that they thought they might normally not be able to. Yeah. I hope I answered that question. I'm sorry.
The question is, how did you find Mooney's mother?
Bria Vinaytha, and she is a first-timer, and I found her on Instagram. I had some success with using social media with Tangerine, where we cast some of the supporting characters from Vine and YouTube. But in this time, we were actually looking to go the conventional route with this character, especially just because it was a bigger budget, and I have a responsibility to my financiers, and you have to put some known, recognizable faces in your film, or you're not going to have any box office. So we were thinking about all the names you can imagine. Some pop stars, a lot of 20 to 24-year-old, the hot names in Hollywood right now for that role. But I just kept going back to Bria's Instagram page that I had found by accident, saying, yeah, but nothing will, this girl is so fresh, and she'll bring something to Haley that these others won't. And then on top of that, I like bringing fresh faces to the screen, because for certain characters, somebody like a Haley who's going through so many struggles, I think the audience really, if they recognize a pop star in that role, and it'll be constantly taking us out. And so I thought for Haley, it might be worth just giving Bria a chance. She was making me laugh in all her videos on Instagram. She had that youthful energy. She had the physicality, obviously, the tattoos. And I was like, why don't we she's already putting herself out there, so I don't think confidence is going to be an issue. Let's just see if she can understand the concept of acting, and she doesn't stiffen up in front of the camera. So I brought her down to Orlando. That was a whole ordeal, because I had to reach out to her on a direct message on Instagram, and my Instagram is like all my dogs, so it's just, she's like, what? It's a stalker. But she Googled me, and everything was legit, and she came down to Orlando, and she read with Brooklyn, who we had already cast. And I said, she's a young mom, very young mom. She probably had Mooney when she was 15. She never had the chance to grow up herself. Yes, there is obviously a true maternal love here, but I want you to go into this reading like you're her sister, like a sibling type relationship, because that's what they have, a sibling type relationship. And within minutes, Brooklyn was on her lap, and they were singing like top 40 songs that they both knew, and I just thought, this is gonna work. And my financiers were cool about it. June Pictures, Alex Sachs and Andrew Duncan, they let me roll the dice on this one. So, and she was very, very motivated and very enthusiastic, which is great. She said, we all recognized how green she was, and so she took the time. She came a month early and worked also with Samantha. Samantha worked with her, and I worked with her, and we did workshops and exercises every day, and really got her to understand the scenes and the character, until the point where I could ask her to do some improvisation, because I encourage improvisation. I like that on set, to loosen up my dialogue sometimes. And there was that scene at the pool where it's her and Mela Murder, who plays Ashley. And that scene I gave them just the themes, just the beats. I said, you're going to be talking about being a single mom. You're going to talk about perhaps, trying to find employment, and the fact that Mooney is always trying to get maple syrup, and just that stuff. And they were able to put it into a nice tight 20 seconds for me at that pool. And so she's there. Yeah, she's wonderful, and I'm so happy that we found her. Yeah, proud of her.
Okay, we have any more questions here where you want to give the mic?
Where did you actually find Brooklyn?
Oh, sure. Brooklyn, I wanted all the kids to be locally cast. So we actually had a local casting company, Crowdshot. And there's a wonderful local casting company, and they had her in their database. So but for some reason, she wasn't offered up for like the first 2 or 3 auditions, and we were getting very worried. And again, I was like, I'm not going into production until we find our Spanky. And finally, I think it was Patty Wiley, who also helped us with street casting there, and she was just, okay, you have to look at Brooklyn. And again, within seconds that she was in the room, she won us over. I think it was even before she started. We were putting her into scenarios and scenes, but it was before that. She came in and started doing like squats to get herself psyched up. And I was like, she's doing a boot camp. What is it? So, yeah, she's just incredible.
Before we do wrap up, I want to ask you something that's unique to your movie as well, as besides mixing talented actors with non-professionals, but even with casting, you've had a reputation of just really getting in the community, as you talked about, finding people, if not on Instagram, in person? And how important is it to you, to have this kind of flexibility that involves improvisation and the way you shoot? And how much of that is part of the storytelling?
I think it's a big part. It's like I even designate some scenes. Chris and I write some scenes. In this case, there were probably 5 scenes in the script where we had very little in terms of dialogue, just sample lines. But instead, for example, when they had to sell perfume, we said, we're going to have our 2 actors interact with real pedestrians, and we're going to shoot this in a candid camera style with telephoto lenses and laved mics. And then you can only give the actors so much. I mean, they're going to have to gauge how to do it with each individual person who's going to be a stranger coming out of nowhere. So both Bria and Brooklyn were able to do that. So anyway, so there are those moments in the script, but then there's also very tightly scripted moments, and we don't want to deviate much because we either like the lines or there's exposition that we can't deviate from, and then there's like a nice hybrid sometimes because I allow my actors to loosen it up. So that shot, I mean, the scene where the ice cream drips on the floor and there's that taunting of the 2 kids to Bobby and back and forth, very tightly. We shot it, they performed it basically word for word the way it was scripted, and then at the very end, Willem threw in a improvised "thank you very much," and Brooklyn goes, "You're not welcome." So that's how, that they added their little 2 cents on the end, which enhances the scene and made it into the trailer.
And it's great that word you use, hybrid, of how you take these elements of Italian neorealism and improvisation and make it in well-written scripts and make it work. And at the same time, you have these universal themes. I mean, we talk about this all the time, or at least I do. People are probably sick of me talking about the universality of a character or theme and how even despicable characters can resonate with people. And you're doing it in such a creative and fun way. It's just wonderful to see it. And I hope you come back here many, many times in the future.
Can I just say one thing before we wrap up? Just because I'm trying to get this information out to the audience. If you're interested in looking into this in your own community, please visit the website for the National Alliance to End Homelessness. That's on a national level, and it'll give you information for different, obviously, places all around the United States. But if you want to help specifically Kissimmee and Orlando, hope192.org. That is the agency that we worked with they're actually trying to get a low-income housing facility on their property to help most of these families move out of the motels into their affordable housing complex. So just wanted to get that out there. So hope192.org. Okay. All right. Well,
thank you, Sean.
Thank
Sean
you.
Baker, the Florida Project.